Ms. Martha, Ms. Christina, friends, I'm pleased to have you all here for the peer-to-peer presentation on increased relevance of India. But as you know, this topic is quite huge, and I've just tried to create an interest among some of the audience so that you can learn about India in depth in course of time. I've divided this presentation into 3 parts. There are a few introductory slides which will give you a brief idea of what India was in the ancient times. And then there are a few slides on the performance of India since its independence in 1947. This will give you an idea of what we can expect in future from India. And there are a few slides at the end which deal with the increased relevance of India for the future. I'll start with the map of India. As you can see, India is in a neighborhood which few would envy. We have Afghanistan, which is under fundamentalists for a long time. Pakistan, which is dominated by military. China, which is communist. Nepal, which was a monarchy and still it is reeling under the Maoist influence. Bhutan, which is a constitutional monarchy. Bangladesh, which was under military rule for a long time. Myanmar, which was under military junta till about last year. Sri Lanka, which was under civil war till about 2-3 years back. And India, you can see, is the only democracy which has survived since its independence as a democracy without any military rule or anything. So this will give you an idea of our achievement as a democracy as such. The government of India as such is divided when we have a federal government at the center, and we have 28 states and 7 union territories. And the states are broadly organized on linguistic basis. India is an ancient civilization. So instead of using my words to describe what India was, I've picked up some of the wisest men of the human race who also said these things about India. This is a quote by Mark Twain. I hope I'm not going wrong. India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of Indian human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. Most valuable and most artistic materials in the history of man are treasured up in India only. This is a quote by Mr. Mark Twain. And this one is by Relevance, was a French scholar. If there's one place on the face of the earth where all the dreams of living men have found a home, from the very earliest days when man began to dream of existence, it is India. The background is the Golden Temple, which is located in Amritsar. This is the holiest shrine for the Sikh community. We owe a lot to the Indians. We owe a lot to the Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worthwhile scientific discovery could have been made. This is Albert Einstein, theoretical physicist, Germany, most of you know. And this is the Max Muller, who is again a German scholar. If I were asked under what sky the human mind has most fully developed, some of its conscious girls, has most deeply pondered on the greatest problems of life, and has found solutions, I should come from India. I'm sure this has given you a brief idea of what India was in the ancient times. This is a colorful photograph which I picked up from Rajasthan deserts. I'll talk a little about the Indian society that we have today. Indian society is quite tolerant and secular. It's not just today, it's been traditionally tolerant and secular because of the many invasions that took place over thousands of years into India. India is highly diverse, be it geographical, be it racial, be it linguistic and religious. Geographically diversity, like the Everest, we have the highest mountains in the Everest, and most beautiful beaches in Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep. We have lush green forests on the southwest and the northeast parts of the country. We have arid desert in the western part of the country, and we have fertile plains of Ganges, Brahmaputra and other rivers. So it's a country which has every form of geographical diversity. Racially, 70% of the Indian population is about Indo-Aryans, 25% is Dravidians, 3% is Mongoloids, and few groups of Negroid races. Linguistically, we are quite, we may be the most diverse nation in the world. As per the 1961 census of the government of India, there were 1,652 mother tongues. They are not languages, mother tongues, identified in the census. Even today, we have about 22 languages which are spoken by more than 1 million people each. And about 120 languages are spoken by more than 10,000 people each. And in addition to this, every state has its own official language. And religious-wise, 80% of our population is Hindus. I mean, we are the third largest Muslim populated country in the world with about 170 million population, and we have about 22 million Christians and more than 20 million Sikhs. As I told you earlier, India has always been invaded by the foreigners because of its national wealth. From Alexander to Persians to Mongols to British, everyone came to India, and most of them settled down in India. So this led to India being an amalgamated society. I mean, it served as the melting point for most of the dominant civilizations over a period of time. India is the birthplace of peaceful religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. And one more thing, India is an ancient civilization, but the country that we have is just about 65 years old. We didn't have this country with these borders before 65 years. So it's a young country, but which has a legacy of an ancient civilization. And this is the map. I mean, due to brevity of time, I'll move on to the period at the time of independence. I mean, India was never fully administered by the British as a single country. The area in the dark shaded portions were the princely states, which were governed by the princes, but they had a suzerainty agreement with the British. So under which they relinquished some part of sovereignty to the British, and in turn they were secured from any external aggression by the British Army. And the area in the lighter shade, they were directly administered by the British as part of the provinces. So in a way, the Indian national movement, which occurred over hundreds of years, was essentially a nation-building exercise, along with the fight against the British for independence. So it's a unique country where the nation itself was being built, along with the fight for its independence. With this background, I'll take you to the challenges at the time of Indian independence. Hasty withdrawal and refugee problem. The British were in a haste to withdraw from India after the Second World War. In fact, the British government decided that they would withdraw completely from India on 30th of June 1948. But actually, the independence was granted on 15th of August 1947. That's almost a year in advance. This would show the hurried manner in which the independence was granted. In fact, Mr. Radcliffe was the chairman of the Boundary Commission to demarcate the boundary between India and Pakistan, which is about roughly 6,000 kilometers of area. And he was given 5 weeks to demarcate the boundary. This led to a lot of problems. I mean, even the chairman himself was so much disgusted with the work that he did that he destroyed all the working papers and even refused to take the 40,000 rupees which was due to him as remuneration. And in fact, the Boundary Commission's award was made public on 17th of August 1947, that is 2 days after the grant of independence. So it's a very tricky issue where India became independent without having EMPA boundary. And this hasty manner of withdrawal led to a lot of refugee problems right at the time of independence. An estimate of 15 million people migrated from each country to the other, from one country to the other. And it was a huge problem at that time. And there was a lot of communal violence and quite a lot of deaths at that as well. And as I told you, India was not under unified administration at the time of the British rule. So the integration of these princely states with the British provinces was a major challenge. And quite a few experiments were made, and by 1956, the states were broadly reorganized on linguistic basis. And this was a major challenge. India's independence coincided with another important event in the history of the world, that is Cold War. So Indian society, like any other society at that time, was prone to go to socialist way because it was appealing to the masses. Most of the people were not rich, so there was a natural tendency to go to socialism. But the leaders of that time, they had a vision. So they could, in a way, they could divert the attention of the people by creating a non-alignment movement. This was a way of both capitalism and socialism. In any case, the leaders would not have gone to capitalist way, because that would have had a lot of opposition from the masses. So, in a way, this concept of non-aligned movement ensured that around 40 to 50 countries didn't go to socialist way in those periods after the colonial powers left the countries. but this is less appreciated in the Western world. India had to fight 4 major wars. 2 of them were Kashmir in 1947 and in 1965. And there was a aggression by China when there was a border dispute for a long time. And India started supporting the Tibetan cause. In 1959, India granted asylum to the Dalai Lama, and in fact the government of Tibet runs in exile from India. So this infuriated the Chinese, and there was an aggression in 1962. And that was right at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. India was totally unprepared, and so we lost quite a bit of territory in that aggression. And there was another one in 1971, which resulted in the partition of Bangladesh from Pakistan. And in fact, if there's time, I'll talk about it a little later. Ferment debts to food surplus nation. During the British rule, India was prone to ferment debts because food would be available in some part of the country and it could not be transported to the other part. As I told you, because of the lack of administrative control of the British for the entire area. So in 1943, Bengal famine, there was a big famine in Bengal. The estimates say that about 1 million to 4 million people perished in that famine. From such a situation, we have become a food surplus nation with about 250 million tons of food production in the last year, with about 50 million tons in buffer stock. India has been a victim of cross-border terrorism right from its independence. In fact, the first incursions took place in 1947, within 2 months of independence, when irregulars from the Pakistani side came into the Kashmir to occupy it. And at that time, the King of Kashmir signed an instrument of accession to the Indian government. And that has still remained a problem even today. And in fact, even as late as 2008, we had a major terrorist attack in Mumbai, in which some 165 people died, and there were attacks at about more than 10 places in the economic capital of the country, which is Mumbai. And still we are living up with cross-border terrorism. With this, I'll give you a brief, I'll give you some statistics on India. India has an area of 3.28 million square kilometers. This is roughly one-third the size of USA and one-third of roughly about China. India has a population of 1.2 billion, which is almost 4 times the population of USA. And the age structure is that 0 to 14 years is 29.3, 15 to 64 is 65.2, which means just about less than 5% of the population is above 65 years of age, which means India has a very, very young population. India's GDP on purchase per capita terms for the year 2011 was $4.515 trillion, which is third in the world next to USA and China. On official exchange rate, it was $1.676 trillion. India's GDP growth in 2011 was 7.2%. In 2012, it has come down a little to less than 7%. Investment as a percentage of GDP is 32.8% in India, which is amongst one of the highest in the world. India spends about 2.5% of its GDP on military. And India has an estimated 80 to 100 nuclear warheads. There are no official estimates on this. These are guesses. This is a Royal Bengal tiger, which is found in India and Pakistan, which is a national animal of both India and Bangladesh. And not Pakistan. Now we talk a little on India's relevance. I have divided into 5 categories like geopolitical factors, successful model of democracy, demographic dividend, economic growth, and India is a peaceful nation. So I have subdivided it into these 5 categories, and I will discuss them one. This is the Asiatic lion, which is found in the Gir forest in India, quite an exotic animal. Geopolitical factors. The world power structure changed on the discovery of a sea route to India. India is right at the center of the old world, as we know it. Major trade routes pass through India. And in fact, Europe's dominance of the world started after the discovery of a land route, after the discovery of a sea route to India. Till that time, the trade was mostly conducted through the Ottoman Empire, and they were flourishing. And in fact, as most of you would know, America itself was discovered by Columbus while he was on a mission to discover a sea route to India. And India is the only country which has an ocean to its name. So India has always been very important in the world. India is a capable regional power to ensure balance of global power. India is a regional power right now. China is an aspiring global power. China is an ancient and a matured civilization. But the only problem with China right now is that it's not a democracy. Democracy may not be the best form of government, but the possibility of taking rash decisions, which may have repercussions on the entire humanity, with nuclear weapons in the world map, is very low in the case of a democracy. So I think the global leadership should always remain with the democratic nation. And I think as of now, US is, as of now, is the most suitable nation for that. But India's role in ensuring that it's with the democracy is highly relevant. Quite often India is bracketed with Pakistan. But then as the figures would show you, they are in a different league. Pakistan is roughly 1/4 of the area of India, 1/6 in population, has 1/10 of the GDP on purchase power parity, and Pakistan military spends 13% of Indian military. So it would show that Pakistan is not a match to India per se. But Pakistan was relevant in the Cold War era because India was seen to be pro-USSR. So the Western powers found a suitable ally in Pakistan. And the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 made Pakistan the most relevant region in the world because they were able to fight the Afghanis through Mujahideens in Afghanistan. So even now, I think the most important issue for the world is the security of the nuclear weapons that they have. The most important concern is that it should not fall in the wrong hands. This is also important because there are nowhere in the world are 3 nuclear powers having a common border with unresolved border disputes which are decades old. And these 3 nations have 40% of the human race. And many of the terrorist groups are from this region, and with international assistance and cooperation, India can contain global terrorism. From the beginning of this century, the world has been fighting a war on terrorism. In fact, India has been fighting it since 1947, as I told you earlier. India has successfully resolved the Punjab issue, and now Kashmir is also very close to normalcy. But still, we are facing cross-border terrorism. And India has about 1/3. India is the 3rd largest country with the Muslim in terms of Muslim population, and still there is not a single terrorist group from India which operates on a global level, even though there is so much of fuss being made about Kashmir. So this goes to show that India has been successful in averting terrorism. I think this experience can be used by the international community in the fight against the terrorism. In fact, most of the terrorist groups are operating right now in South and Southeast Asia. I think with the international assistance and cooperation, India would be able to better fight its own terrorism as well as be a role model for the other countries in the region in the fight against terrorism. This is an image of women participating in an election rally in India. You can see quite a colorful picture. And they all attend the rally and most of them go and vote. Right now the Indian democracy is, Indian democracy is decided by women. They vote en masse, and whoever the women support, they win the elections. With the Arab Spring and other aspirations for democracy, I think the number of democratic countries in the world is going to go up. And most of the countries that have become independent of late, they have a lot in common with India. Most of the countries have diverse population. They have some kind of colonial legacy. And there's always a fear of majority dominating the minority in all those societies. Here, I think India has some time-tested solutions which they can use in their evolution of their democracy. India was fortunate to have great trusted leaders because the Indian national movement itself was spread over about 70 years, minimum. So a lot of people could evolve as trusted leaders. And that way, once the country became independent, those leaders could lead the country. I think this is missing in some of the democracies which evolved within few months actually, within few months of struggle. So they won't have these kind of trusted leaders, which a movement normally throws up. Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister for the first 17 years. This is quite a long time. And this continued at the top, ensured that India could flourish as a democracy. I think this was missing in some of the neighbors, some of our neighbors. Like Pakistan lost its founder within 14-15 months of its becoming independent. Bangladesh lost Mujibur Rahman within 5 years of its independence. Burma, Aung San, who was the most prominent who was the most prominent nationalist leader, he was killed even before the country became independent. So, just because they lost the trusted leaders, the countries could not flourish as democracies. So, I think for emerging democracies, it's good to have continued leadership at the top for a long time. Even though some of the some people disagree, they feel that it should be one should not be at the top for a long time. But this is not India law. Another reason why India democracy succeeded is reserved constituencies for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. These are the marginalized sections in the society. In fact, for scheduled castes, India has about 87 constituencies reserved, and for scheduled tribes, about 48 constituencies reserved, which make about 25% of the total membership of the parliament. Without this reservation, these marginalized sections would not have been able to send their representatives to parliament to fight for their rights. And so their representatives have acted as a buffer in containing any rebellious attitude of these communities. In India, we don't have a reservation for minorities, but the successive governments have always represented minorities. In fact, we have had 4 presidents from the minority community, and every government will have at least few members of the minority community who are given good portfolios in the cabinets. Foreseeing the importance of free and fair elections in a democracy, constitution makers of the country gave a lot of autonomy to the election commissioner. So he can be removed only by an impeachment proceeding, which is almost impossible. So he has functional autonomy in terms of financial and administrative spheres. So this autonomy has ensured that this institution could develop as a trusted institution of the government, of the nation. In fact, one unique feature of the country is that the government of the day, they never try to obliterate diversity. They develop the concept of unity in diversity, which means that we accept that we are diverse and still we try to live together. No efforts are made to homogenize the population, which in any case would have been a failure. But no attempts were ever made. There was some effort to have one language for the whole country, but this also was withdrawn because of reservations of some groups. But otherwise, unity in diversity has been the concept right from the days of independence till now. In India, we have elections at 3 tiers. At the parliament level, at the state legislatures, and at the local self-governing institutions level. We have 1/3 reservation for women at the local self-governing institutions, and the process for giving 1/3 reservation for women in the parliament and the state legislatures is underway. In fact, women in India are quite active in the sense that we have had a women prime minister, the current president of the Indian National Congress, which is the party in power, is a woman, and we have had not less than 14 chief ministers in the different states of the country. This is an image of martial art in the southwestern part of the country, in a state called Kerala. Demographic dividend. With about 2.5% of the land, India supports about 17% of the global population. This will give you a rough idea of the pressure on our resources. Despite this, India never went for compulsory family planning. I think, unlike in China. Like China, their population control is mostly due to the one-child policy, whereas in India it was due to the creation of awareness and the maturing of the society. So we don't know what will happen when China, if and when China tries to withdraw the one-child policy, whether there will be a population boom or it will stabilize, we don't know for sure. But India is not going to have a population boom from now on. Median age of 26.5 compared to US is 37.1 and China is 35.9 years right now. So So this means India has a very young population. In another 10, 20 years time, India will be the only country which has an active youth population which will enter the economy as producers. Internet providing the infrastructure for education. In India, the infrastructure for education is not up to the standards, but we have found a way out. India has about, by the end of this year, India will have about 150 million internet users. So the government is trying to use this infrastructure for education. Like the government of India is developing a tablet, has already developed a tablet by name Akash, which is a PC, which the government is planning to sell to the students for $15. I mean, that's it, the price of a PC tablet. And it's as good as many other tablets actually. In fact, to give a personal example, even my daughters, when they were in India, they would go through Khan Academy videos to study mathematics. And they found it interesting. I think this is the future. I mean, all that it needs is just one good teacher, a video camera, and internet access. And you can educate the entire country. I think the Indian leaders have recognized this. And this is a data from OECD. India will have 12% out of 104 million global tertiary degree holders by 2020. This is going to be, India is going to be a leader in the knowledge economy in the future. We have 125 million English-speaking population in 2001. This is likely to be 300 million by the year 2030. And I think by that time we will be the largest English-speaking nation in the world. Enormous talent migrating out of the nation. I mean, this has been an issue for a long time, but now I think with globalization, this is not that, it should not be that big an issue. I mean, the Indian diaspora is about 20 to 25 million in number, and most of them have been doing extraordinarily good. I mean, extraordinarily good in the host countries. Like even now, we have 2 governors in the United States who are of Indian origin, and their parents have migrated just about 25 to 30 years back. Sorry, within 40 years. So I mean, this is in addition to people like Indra Nui, who is the chairperson of Pepsi. Like Vikram Bhatt, who was running City Capital recently, Vinod Khosla, who was the co-founder of Sun, and Sabir Bhatia, who was the co-founder of Hotmail. So Indians have been contributing immensely to the host nations. This is the cover of Time magazine in 2004. And what it says is, why the world's biggest democracy is the next great economic superpower, and what it means for America. So I don't have to say much on this. India is a vibrant market economy led by entrepreneurs and not the state. This is significant because when markets run the economy, the institutions that are necessary, like competent judiciary and a vibrant media, copyright, patent class, and all those institutions, they all develop simultaneously. Which is unlike the case in China, where it is state-driven. So we don't know what's going to happen the next time when there's a change in the state. India is a knowledge-based economy in a globalized world. Even now, 56% of our GDP comes from the tertiary sector compared to China's 46%. Knowledge-based economy is one where there is more emphasis on the intellectual capabilities rather than on the inputs in terms of natural resources and others. So I think India has an edge in this. Due to the regulated growth, Indian government didn't suffer the economic crisis like the Southeast Asians did in 1997, or even the global recession that the world is going through now, has not affected India too much, and even though there are some cases of it, because of the regulated growth. Indian economy is driven by the domestic market, domestic consumption, and not just the exports. For instance, India's export is about $300 billion compared to China's $1.9 trillion. So Chinese economy is mostly manufacturing. Ours is knowledge. So I think in the future, where there's going to be a lot of scope for knowledge economy, I think India has an edge. Huge scope for tourism. I mean, this is one sector which India has not tapped to the fullest. Tourism contributes about 7% of our GDP, and in global terms, it's 0.7%. So there's a huge scope. Just 0.7% of the global tourism contributes 7% of the GDP. And one important thing is India is evolving. Its systems are evolving. They are not forced. They are not there just because somebody has wanted them to be like that. So the possibility of any unforced events like a huge demand for democracy or some other issue, that's much lesser in an evolving country like India, because every citizen wants to be a part of India. They are proud of being India because they feel that they are better off being with India rather than the otherwise. So the investors will be much safer investing in India. This is the image of Mr. Mahatma Gandhi on the right hand side and Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was the founder of Pakistan. India has always been an apostle of peace. India in its history has never invaded or occupied any territory outside its current borders. In about say 3,000 years. India is the first major country to get its independence by peaceful means. That is when the Indian Congress formulated the non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, and other things. So the Indian movement itself was not a violent one. So though there were some instances of violence here and there. India was a role model to South Africa and Martin Luther King. They have said that they tried to reproduce the Indian model based on their conditions prevailing in that country. India has been a high contributor of manpower to the UN peacekeeping operations. India has contributed about 100,000 peacekeepers in about 40 UN missions. India has never tried to intimidate nations with its nuclear capability, even when its parliament was attacked. India's nuclear policy is like when we will never use the nuclear weapon first. But if somebody attacks us with the nuclear weapon, then we will be operating nuclear. And peace begins at home. Indian society as such is still family driven. So, the thing is the culture itself, when in a family you learn to live with differences. You may not like your brother or sister, but still you have to live with them. So the practice of coexisting are developed right at the family. And I think this is very important for a nation as such. And the concept of India always has been unity in diversity. We have been praising diversity and we have always wanted to have diversity. And I think at the end of the day, what really matters is not whether your country is economically powerful or politically powerful or has a huge military. But I think at the end of the day, what matters is whether the government treats its citizens equally and whether there are equal opportunities for every citizen to grow up. I think that way India is wonderful for that, that way. And I don't know whether, I know India has a long way to go to reach it, to attain its true potential. I don't know whether it's going to be in my generation or in the next generation. But whenever it be, I think India is a worthy nation to be there right at the top. I'll finish my presentation with a small quotation by our neighbor, a Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu. He says, governing a great nation is like cooking a small fish. Too much handling will spoil it. I don't know if China understands it, but we understand it. Thank you very much.
Open up now for questions, anybody?
Yeah, I have a question. So a few years ago, I read a book by, I can't remember the name, but it's called Cost of Living, Arundhati Roy.
Okay.
And in that book, it suggested that the IMF and the World Bank encouraging India to build dams along many of its ancient rivers where thousands of people or millions of people live caused a huge migration to the cities and made the slums probably much, much worse. Can you know anything about that?
The beauty with Indian democracy is that in a country like China, it would be much easier to build larger dams. But in a country like India, it goes through a very difficult process. So I don't think any major big dam project is going to ever happen in India given the present circumstances. But
I was talking about the past, in the last 60, 70 years.
We have had huge dams.
I'll take that question.
Okay.
The two major dams which have been built in the last 20 years. One is in a place called Tehri, Garhwal, and the other is Sardar Sarovar, which is the two major dams. All major dams in India were built by Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister, at the time of immediately after independence. this particular case where Arundhati Roy has been talking about is one dam, maybe two dams in the last 50 years, 40 years. And all the environmental processes have gone through it. But this is the beauty of democracy. You know, the democracy, the people, activists thrive. I don't think that's a very big issue. It wasn't a very big issue. And the displacement for one dam in a population of 1.2 billion people is a couple of thousands. But if it benefits maybe 500,000 people through irrigation and electricity, it's worth it.
And displacement rehabilitation policy is, I think, the best in the world. The amount of compensation we give, the amount of land we give for resettlement, we give jobs. Still, of course, that is a problem for the tribals who are living there indigenously for, say hundreds of years. But they are given jobs, they are given security of, shelter, and they are given monetary compensation, vast by all means. But of course, that problem of, whether development for the larger good will sacrifice some smaller considerations, that is a discussion. I mean, that problem is there, definitely.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One is if you can give us some insights about how the social indicators are going in India, like poverty or access to health and education. And the other one was there was a very famous anthropologist writing before the independence about how the social structure in India rests in a big incidence in the relationship between or among the castes.
Yeah.
How that thing is going now.
Okay. Well, regarding the social indicators, there has been development, but I won't say that we are on top of the world or anything like that. Like we spend about 2.5% of our GDP on health, which is amongst the lowest in the world actually. And we spend less than 5% on our education. But but the thing is, we are progressing, and democracy is very difficult to develop. There are always comparisons of countries to animals. Like India is compared to an elephant. It's like an elephant; it cannot run faster. But then it walks slowly but surely. So that's why I think India will attain preeminent position even in the social indicators. And even within the social indicators, there are some states which are very well developed. Like some parts of the country are well developed, some of the parts are not that developed. Because India itself is like too many nations in one nation. It's like, quite huge. So social indicators we are improving, but I won't say that we are improving at a much faster rate. Regarding the castes, India has traditionally been a society classified as castes. Because the people came from all over the civilization, from every part of the world, and they all settled down. And then they started, even for the British, the easiest way to rule was by following a policy of divide and rule. So it became, they also created some divisions and they exploited some divisions. So that way, traditionally, India has been a caste-ridden society. So even when the British were there, there was a lot of caste structure, and that continues even now. Because in old civilizations, there's a huge premium on identity. People will die to preserve an identity, which may not look rational, but then that's how it works actually. So even when people identify themselves with their castes, and then the religion, and then the culture. You cannot change it overnight. But I think with globalization, this internet, the assimilation of culture, all those things are changing a bit now. Now people feel that citizens are important than the nation. When earlier, maybe even 20, 30 years back, everybody would have said that the country comes first and then the citizen. So things are changing. But they have not changed much. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Of course, India is one of the best places in the world.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, do you think that the tolerance that you show us influenced for the high levels of corruption in India?
could be. I mean, all those societies, have this issue. Corruption. There is a feeling like even if you want to develop, like if you can develop by 10%. Corruption has been an issue, is an issue now, but then I think it should not obstruct the growth of the country. But now too much of focus on corruption makes the decision makers to be very reluctant in taking decisions. I think every society which has developed has had corruption at some point of time or the other. I think Las Vegas was built by the liquor mafia. There was prohibition at that time, and the mafia thrived, and then they came up with the Las Vegas. So I think that development comes with this kind of problem, and India has been an evolving society. So there would have been corruption in almost all the developed nations, and now India is going through that phase. Maybe in the next 20, 30 years, maybe we will have less corruption in the country.
I have a point to add. We are struggling with corruption, and there are systemic changes that are being put in place by the government. In fact, Citizens Activism for Right to Information Act has now led to absolute transparency in the government, and then lesser interface with the government officials, like things are accessible on internet, on a net-based platform. So corruption is one, even if it is there, it is coming out in the open. We have independent organizations like the Central Auditor, the CAG. He is again a constitutional authority like the Chief Election Commissioner, and he audits and is absolutely ruthless in his comments if the government took some actions which were like not really very proper actions. So there's a lot of debate. We have a free press. So these things, not only the corruption, of course what is there and has to be brought down, but with this transparency and the independent judiciary and independent auditor and accountant general and free press, these things are also coming out in the open. People are getting aware, and so we hope that it will, in the years to come, it will definitely come down a lot.
If I can have one more thing. India, as I told you, India has a lot of pressure on its resources. There's a lot of competition. So you have to fight to get things. And for instance, like, if we compare it, like, the health. If I have fever, I can go to the doctor in India and get cured by spending about $2. Whereas in the developed country, it would be a few hundreds of dollars. What I meant to say is the government has to artificially keep the prices low so that every section of the society can get that benefit. And the flip side is the resources are not that much. So there is competition. So people are tempted to pay, and it works the other way also, to get access to those resources. That's one part of the story. Well, I know I'm not convinced, but still, we'll come out with that. Yeah.
Okay, so just a small comment about democracy, which has its costs. I read some survey which was conducted, I think, the public health school. So they compared the implementation of community insurance schemes in India and in China. So
health insurance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they paid attention. The way how those schemes were implemented and introduced. And because of the level of democracy is much higher in India, so they ended up with less coverage. So that then in China, when it was introduced, the vertically with the command, and it was interesting, really. That's probably because of democracy. Right. So just to bring to that back to the point you've just presented in your presentation. presentation about diversity. So, I mean, they really are very impressive. It's so diverse, really. And I really want to ask, when you mentioned that you're the representative government allowing to minorities to participate, how do you define the minorities in the diverse community? So it's a bit confusing for me. So this is one problem. I'll ask the second question. So you started your presentation with a listing of countries which in eastern part India has borders, and they have the different level of development. And I'm really interested in whether you have any issue from the northeast and eastern part, the population of India, and how diverse this population is for the rest of the country, and if there is any issue which probably needs to be paid attention. And
when you're talking about the northeastern part of the country, okay. We define minority on a regional basis as well. Religion-wise, Muslims, Christians, Jains, Buddhists, all these communities are considered to be minorities. And there are linguistic minorities as well. In a state, say there are different states which are organized on linguistic basis. In a state, say Tamil Nadu, Tamil is the largest mother tongue. If somebody from, say, Kerala goes there, he is considered a minority, linguistic minority in that state. So his language, he has the right to preserve his language in Tamil Nadu as well. So if he wants to send his children to a school where his mother tongue is taught, the state will ensure that he has access to that school also. So that way the minorities everywhere, whatever the form of, there are minorities in some castes, like scheduled castes I told you, they have reservations so that they can live in the manner they want. Scheduled tribes, they have lots of, they cannot be alienated of their land without certain procedures. So there are provisions to ensure that the minorities can live the way they want to without any fear from the majority. So that has been the philosophy behind the constitution and the working of the government so far. And regarding the northeast, if I can show you the map, beyond Bangladesh, there's a very small area which connects the rest of the northeast with the mainland. So, as you know, in a society like India, culture, language, everything changes with about, say, 200 kilometers. Even within a particular state, if you travel about every 200 kilometers, you will have different culture. And one culture will be totally different from the other. So there is cultural differences. There has been, when most of the people in the northeast, they belong to Mongoloid race. And in fact, China claims a large part of northeast to be its as part of Tibet. So there are issues with that, but I don't think any person would be better off not being in India, not being in India now. In fact, even Kashmir. If you can see, the problem with Kashmir is not internal actually. The people of Kashmir don't want to be a part of Pakistan, but Pakistan wants it to be a part of Pakistan.
We have time for one last question. If there's one more question or final comments.
First of all, thank you for your interesting overview. I have two questions. One is about gender equity issue. As I know, historically it was a big problem for India, especially for rural regions. And not to know the recent changes concerning this problem. And the second question is about human organ trafficking. As I know, it was a great problem as well for India. And I'd like to know more about the policy trends or decisions that there is in place.
Okay. Regarding the gender issue, you would have read from so many articles that women in India are not treated on par with men. That is discrimination. In fact, even our sex ratio is slightly tilted in favor of the men. And this has been a culture basically. Like, people want to have male children. In fact, the male only can perform the funerals for the parents. So there are certain cultural reasons due to which men are preferred. But then the society also changes, and there are a lot of disadvantages to the women also. But I think with the contentment, with one scientific invention, I think the women's rights all over the world have developed, and that's the development of contraceptives. I mean, I personally feel that with that one innovation, women could decide when they want to have children, how many children they want. So once this became possible, I think they could equally compete with men. They could get out of the home. Otherwise, one child is 3-4 years of a mother's time, and that's what youth. So if you have 4 children, and one child takes about 4 years, means 16 years of your prime life is gone. But now that's not the case. So in India also the women rights and the gender equality is coming up slowly. And as I told you, the government at its level is trying to promote women in politics. There is a reservation, as I told you, at the local self-government level, and those women are now aspiring to come up to the next level, which is at the states, and at the parliament, there's an approach to give a reservation at the top level, from the top also. So I think in course of time, women in India will also have better access. But of course, the rural women, who are mostly illiterate. So it's a big challenge.
I'll just supplement.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting point. Government of India and governments offer free education to girl child. Up to class 10, 12. It's free education to all girls in the rural area. Of course, in the urban areas, everybody can go to good schools. But education is the key, and wherever you have gender discrimination, there are pockets in the state, in the country. It relates to poor educational standards in those particular states. Wherever the social indices have moved up, there are large number of states where women education and literacy is very, very high. So, and out of 27 states, there are about maybe 18-19 states which have moved into higher literacy rates of women. There are about 6-7 states which are problem states in terms of health, in terms of mortality, in terms of women education. Those are the problem states in our country, and that is how India gets pulled up. Poverty, everything relates to those 5, 6, 7 states out of 27 states. That's how India gets pulled up.
And regarding the organ trade, quite frankly, when I don't have much information on that.
Right.
Organ trade. Anyone?
Again, the point which Irma asked, on health, we do not have government insurance schemes. We have free health for everyone.
No, that was the point.
We
Not
have-
the health, but the way how it was implemented, and this democratic approach, so ended up with less coverage, and with the autocratic approach. So that was
here
less,
in India, what we do is across the board, there is government hospital systems, government doctor system, and health is completely free, including medication, including medicines. In the rural areas, and there are also problems of corruption, etc. there. But there is a special health mission which the government is focusing health for all, and it ensures that very good primary health centers at the village level, moving to the district hospitals, to the state hospitals, all equipped by government doctors, fully funded by government. There is very little health insurance. Health insurance is
but
basically.
GDP for us is very low. As you said.
Yeah, the amount of money that we can.
No, that is what that is how the problem of resources comes. So if you cater to 1.2 billion people for free in health, obviously there are pressures.
Organ trade, I would say that I have some limited knowledge about it. Partly it is because of poverty, and partly because of unethical medical practices. There are a large number of medical institutions. Not all of them are the regulations are there, but to be able to regulate them effectively is a problem. And so they take advantage of their patients, the poverty of their patients who have to sell either blood, or in fact sometimes they don't even know. And in fact at one point of time a few years ago that was a lot of problem. I think there is more awareness and more vigilance on the part of the government to prevent that. But because of the poverty and the amount of money that they are able to offer, especially for kidney and liver transplants, so people have actually less limited knowledge of the actions. Yes, that is poverty.
All right, let's give one more round of applause.